Hey YouTube, Kira Twig here, bringing you all my Draconia Pendulum Yu-Gi-Oh deck profile. This is a deck I've been wanting to build for a while now. It's a deck that focuses on the normal pendulum monsters of the Draconia series, a bunch of different warriors riding on the back of different creatures. It's a really fun deck that focuses on the pendulum effects, being able to search and special summon a bunch of different normal monsters, and the pendulum summon is the big part of the play. So with it, you can have a playstyle that focuses on creating the perfect scales for you to summon out your bigger normal pendulum monsters, while still being able to focus on some of the easy searches that we get with some of the normal spell cards that we have that can special summon and search out all these normal monsters. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So for the Draconia lineup, I'm running 3 copies of Dragoons of Draconia. These cards don't have monster effects, obviously, since they're normal monsters, but their pendulum scale card effects are once per turn. If a normal monster you control destroys an opponent's monster by battle after damage calc, you can add 1 level 4 or higher normal monster from your deck to your hands. This can search out a good majority of different monsters that we run on the deck, including one of our other Draconia monsters, and also being able to add some of the other bigger monsters that we run for the normal monster lineup. And it's also a low scale that you can rely on. One of our higher scales in the deck is Sea Dragoons of Draconia. When a monster is destroyed by battle, you can special summon 1 normal monster from your hand. You can only use this effect of Sea Dragoons of Draconia once per turn. So you have the search power off of your Dragoons of Draconia, and then the special summon power of that monster you just added thanks to Sea Dragoons of Draconia. You have both of these cards that can work together to get the search and summon of another monster additionally on the field. And it is a once per turn for the search and special summon of both of these, but it can give you that bigger monster on the field to go up against your opponent. The last of the Draconia monsters is the Sky Dragoons of Draconia. Once per turn, when a normal monster you control inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can target 1 card on the field and destroy it. So just a good card that can work with the destruction play. The high scales are your Sky and Sea Dragoons, relying on the low scale for Dragoons of Draconia to then set the scale and summon out any monsters between the levels of 2 and 7. So level 3, 4, 5, and 6 monsters can be summoned out quite easily onto the field, and that is the good majority for the pendulum monsters that we run in the deck. So as long as you can set up those scales with our main go-to Draconia monsters, you really don't have any problems for any of the other plays. I also run 3 copies of Lance Forenicus with this card. If a normal monster you control attacks defense and inflicts piercing battle damage to your opponent. So this is another high scale to rely on, but this is more to use if your opponent is going for the defensive play. Otherwise, it's a great card to search as a level 4 or higher monster off of Dragoons of Draconia, and to special summon with Sea Dragoons of Draconia, since this card has 2,500 attack points in total to swing with against your opponent. I also run 3 copies of Dragonhorn Hunter. I would say this is the card that hunts down all the Draconia cards. All normal monsters gain 200 attack. You take no battle damage from battles involving normal monsters you control. So even if you have some of the weaker pendulum monsters on the field, as long as you have this card as your pendulum scale, you won't take any battle damage. It's another lower scale to rely on in the deck, with your Dragoons of Draconia being the lower scale to prefer, but still having 1 additional option to set in the scale, or just have another monster to search and special summon off of these 2 cards. I also run 3 copies of Flash Knight. This card doesn't have any pendulum scale effect or monster effect. It's just an 18k beater, just being another additional search. Since it is a warrior monster, we can search it with cards like Reinforcements in the Army and special summon it onto the field with cards like Unexpected Die. I also run 2 copies of Samurai Cavalry of Reptier. If all at the start of damage step, if this card attacks an opponent's face-up monster that is not a pendulum monster, you can destroy that monster. This is just a good way to get over some of those cards. It is it's not a normal monster, it's an effect monster, but still a card you can pendulum summon out quite easily and also rely on it as a low scale. With the other card to run, Steel Cavalry of Dinome. With this card, at the start of damage step, if this card battles a pendulum monster, this card's attack and defense become half of its current attack and defense until the end of damage step. So with it, you have a play for getting over some more big boss monsters on the field, but I also like running these cards because we do run beyond the pendulum, but you need effect monsters to go into this card, so you have these cards as option because the other cards in the deck are normal monsters, which we do have 1 way to use those monsters to go into beyond the pendulum, but I'll get to that at the end of the video. The last monster that we run in the main deck is just Astrograph Sorcerer for the destruction option to special summon this card out and and search out that Pendulum monster that would have been destroyed by the card effect of this card. Moving on now to the spells, I run 3 Summoner Art. This is just a searcher. I ran this in not Ancient Rules because you mostly want a Pendulum Summon and being able to search out many of the high-level monsters that we run in the deck. Just is a searcher for any of the specific scales that we may need in this deck to use. Also 3 Unexpected Die for the special summon of a monster on the field. This is great to use because we can save our Pendulum Summon for when we have Beyond the Pendulum, just giving us a monster on the field to use with this card, and then just needing 1 more additional normal summon. I also run 2 copies of Painful Decision. You have the Graveyard Search off of one of our plays with our monsters once again, being able to have that resource of our special summon for that play, and being able to search from the cards using Painful Decision to add some of the more important lower scales from our deck to our hand. And I also run 2 Wavering Eyes. I like this card because it can clear out our Pendulum Zone and give us more cards to utilize if there are specific ones we want to set in the Pendulum scale over some of the other ones we may have had already to use. If you don't open up your Dragoons of Draconia or your Sea Dragoons of Draconia and you had to rely on some other Pendulum scales, you can at least use Wavering Eyes to destroy them, gaining an additional search. And if your opponent has Pendulum cards, it's just an added bonus. With the last of the spells being 1 Change of Heart and 1 Reinforcements of the Army search power, and just being able to take an opponent's resource adds to the Beyond the Pendulum play. Moving on now to the traps, I run 3 Pendulum Reborn. With this card, special summon 1 face-up Pendulum monster from your extra deck or 1 Pendulum monster from your graveyard. So with the Painful Decision setup, this could just be another target for you to summon with this card onto the field, especially with the graveyard setup, because then you have no restrictions of where you summon it from. If you summon from the extra deck, you have to summon that monster from the extra deck to the extra monster zone or where one of your link arrows will point. With the last card being 2 Skill Drain. Now, another card I thought of running was Tyrant Throws, which just stops your opponent from summoning using your normal monsters. If you wanted to run that, you could take out the Pendulum Reborn for more of a control playstyle that card can provide. And moving on now to the extra deck, I run 2 copies of Beyond the Pendulum, along with being a great Link Arrow setup, just being able to pay 1,200 life with this card, and then add 1 Pendulum monster from your deck to your hand, can give us the proper scale we may need, whichever one it may be for the deck. Also, negating the activate effects of monsters on the field, or any cards in our Pendulum Zone are negated. It's really not the biggest worry in this deck, because we will most of the time Pendulum Summon right after we use this card. And for the other Link monsters, I run 1 Link Spider. This comes in handy for the fact that we need an effect monster with Beyond the Pendulum, so you can just summon out that normal monster and then go into Link Spider to then use to summon out Beyond the Pendulum. The 1 Underclock Taker, along with 1 IP Masquerena, 1 Heat of the Fire Charmer, 1 Zephyr Metaltron, and 1 Mech Knight Crusader Avermax for the additional Link monster that we run in the deck. For our Xyz monsters, I am running 1 Tornado Dragon, 1 number 60, 1 number 39 Utopia, 1 S39 Utopia the Lightning, and you can run some rank 3 options. I ran rank 4s just because they put to use more of the Flash Knight and Steel Cavalry Dynone, and most of the time I use the level 3s and higher ones to go into the Link plays, but also the 1 Daigusto Morale for a non-effect monster graveyard special summon, and for some of the level 5 options, 1 Zenmao and 1 Volcasaurus. Most of the time I do rely on the Link monsters or just the normal monsters in general, along comboed with Skill Drain to go up against my opponent, but these Xyz monsters and Link monsters do come in handy whenever I need a specific one. As for some of the go-to plays in the deck, if you activate the search power of your Unexpected Die, you can get the special summon of a specific monster on the field for you to use, and then with that summon, you can then go for the Link play of your Link Spider, and then you can either use Link Spider as an additional resource to summon out onto the field another normal monster, which could give you a resource on the field for you to use, or you can save that special summon and go for just the normal summon of your Pendulum monster. If you have the effect one, it's all the better here, but then you can use this card and your Link Spider, since you met the requirements, to then go into your Beyond the Pendulum, and with that you can then pay 1,200 to use Beyond the Pendulum, giving you that search. You'll have the 2 monsters you use for the Link summon set up in your extra deck as well, because the first one from Link Spider will go there, Link Spider will go to the graveyard. Beyond the Pendulum will give you that search, So whatever other pendulum monster you may have in your hand, you want to complete that search with the other card you add off of your Beyond the Pendulum. And then you'll be able to set the pendulum scale, and depending on what scale you have already, if you have a lower scale off of this, it's all the better. If you start off with a higher scale and you get your Dragoons of Draconia, that'd probably be the best one with the lower scale search. You can then pendulum summon back out to the field the monsters you summoned off of the Beyond the Pendulum, and any additional monsters you may have had in your hand to begin with. Also giving you more of an arsenal to use for more resources from the extra deck, or just to go up against your opponent for more of a damage swing, which will then also activate the other pendulum scales with your normal monsters dealing most of that damage. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed. I've been wanting to build this pendulum deck for a while. Like I said, finally got around to it, and I hope you all enjoyed. And as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Twig out.